Arjun Mehra, a young man still grieving the loss of his mother, and Anjali Mehra, his much younger stepmother, seemed like unlikely companions in a quiet Pune household. But behind the polished walls of the Mehra home, their bond twisted into a forbidden affair that would spiral into lies, betrayal, and a brutal murder. What began as comfort soon turned into obsession, and in the end, only blood could silence the secret they were hiding. In the city of Pune, tucked away in a peaceful residential colony lined with identical houses and blooming gardens, the Mehra family appeared to live a charmed life. Rajeev Mehra, a respected businessman in his late 40s, had worked hard to provide his only son, Arjun, with every opportunity. After the tragic death of his first wife, Rajeev had endured years of loneliness before marrying again. His second wife, Anjali, was much younger, elegant, and admired by everyone who met her. With her poised demeanor and warm smile, she seemed to step seamlessly into the role of wife and stepmother, earning approval from relatives and neighbors alike. The wedding had been a grand affair, and gossip about the significant age difference between Rajeev and Anjali quickly faded as people witnessed how devoted she appeared. Arjun, just entering adulthood, greeted her with polite respect, but over time their relationship began to look almost unusually close. To anyone on the outside, it seemed like a heartwarming success story, a broken family rebuilt with affection and stability. Friends of Rajeev often commented on how lucky he was to have found companionship again, and how fortunate Arjun was to have a caring woman looking after the household. Inside the Mehra home, daily routines unfolded like clockwork. Rajeev left early for his business commitments, while Anjali managed the household with grace. She supervised the domestic staff, organized family dinners, and maintained an atmosphere of refinement that impressed every guest. In the evenings, she made sure to host lively family meals where laughter seemed abundant. Arjun, though quiet and reserved, often stayed back with her after dinner, helping to clear dishes or chatting late into the night about his studies and plans. To Rajeev, it was comforting to see his new wife bond so well with his son. He believed it was a sign of harmony, proof that his second marriage was not just a convenience but a blessing. Yet beneath the polished surface, subtle signs of imbalance were present. Anjali's presence was not just that of a dutiful wife. She had an aura that seemed to draw attention, especially from Arjun. The way she carried herself, the softness with which she spoke to him, and the lingering care she showed went unnoticed by Rajeev, who remained absorbed in his business affairs. The Mehra family looked flawless to the outside world, but within the walls of their home, invisible lines were being crossed. No one watching from afar could guess that this carefully built image of love and stability would one day unravel into scandal, betrayal, and death. Arjun had always carried the quiet weight of losing his mother, a loss that left an emptiness he never fully understood. When Anjali entered his life, she filled that gap with a kind of attention he had been craving. She listened when he spoke about his frustrations, encouraged him when he doubted his abilities, and comforted him during his moments of loneliness. What started as maternal concern gradually shifted into something far more complicated. Arjun began to rely on her not just as a stepmother, but as someone who made him feel seen and valued in a way that no one else did. The boundaries between affection and desire blurred slowly, almost imperceptibly. Anjali enjoyed the attention she received from the young man. Rajeev was often absent, consumed by his work and late-night meetings, leaving her with long, empty evenings in a house that felt too large and too quiet. Arjun's presence became her escape from the monotony of being a dutiful wife. He was youthful, eager, and easily influenced by the warmth she offered. What began with subtle gestures, touches that lingered a second too long, stolen glances, and late-night conversations in the dim glow of the living room, soon grew into a secret that neither of them could ignore. The first time their relationship crossed into forbidden territory, both were overwhelmed with guilt and confusion, yet the thrill of secrecy, combined with the hunger for more, drew them back again and again. They convinced themselves it was love, a bond too powerful to deny, even though it was rooted in deception. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months as the affair deepened. To the outside world, they maintained perfect roles, Anjali as the devoted wife and Arjun as the respectful son. Behind closed doors, however, they were entangled in a dangerous passion that grew harder to control. The secrecy began to consume them. Arjun started neglecting his studies, distracted by the thought of their next meeting. Anjali, who had once carefully managed her household duties, now found her mind elsewhere, her emotions divided between the man she had married and the son she was betraying him with. Every encounter heightened the risk of exposure, but instead of stopping, they fed off the danger. Each stolen moment only pushed them deeper into obsession. They had no plan, no vision of how such a forbidden relationship could survive in the long run. All they knew was that the world outside their secret felt increasingly suffocating, and that sooner or later, someone would notice the cracks forming in the carefully painted picture of family harmony. Rajeev was not a man easily distracted from his work, but he was observant by nature. Over time, he began to sense small but unsettling shifts inside his home. The harmony that once seemed natural now carried an undercurrent of tension. Arjun, who had always been respectful, appeared restless and withdrawn, avoiding his father's questions and spending long hours in his room. Anjali, once attentive and cheerful, had grown distant in subtle ways. Her explanations for late outings were vague, her temper sharper than before, and her gaze often seemed lost in thought. To a man as focused as Rajeev, these changes raised questions he could not ignore. He started noticing details that others would have dismissed. Meals that once united the family were now awkwardly quiet, with forced smiles and distracted conversations. Arjun avoided eye contact when Rajeev tried to engage him, while Anjali filled silences with overly rehearsed cheerfulness. Late at night, Rajeev sometimes woke to find her missing from their bed, only to return minutes later with excuses about getting water or checking the locks. He brushed off his doubts at first, but a nagging suspicion began to take root in his mind. The turning point came when Rajeev accidentally came across a message on Anjali's phone. It was short and cryptic, but its tone suggested something intimate, something meant to be hidden. Though the name was not saved, Rajeev recognized his son's number. He felt his chest tighten, a mix of disbelief and dread clouding his thoughts. He did not confront them immediately. Instead, he watched more carefully, piecing together the fragments of behavior he had ignored for too long. Meanwhile, the atmosphere inside the house grew heavier. Arjun struggled with guilt but could not pull himself away from Anjali. She, caught between her role as a wife and her obsession with her stepson, became unpredictable. At times, she showered Rajeev with affection, as if to mask her secret, but her eyes betrayed her inner conflict. The walls of the Mehra home seemed to close in with unspoken tension, every small interaction layered with suspicion and fear. Rajeev did not yet have proof strong enough to confront them, but the seed of betrayal had been planted in his mind. What he did not realize was that his doubts alone were enough to push Anjali and Arjun deeper into paranoia. The facade of a perfect family was cracking, and behind it lay the beginning of something far more dangerous than infidelity, a secret so destructive that it was bound to end in blood. Anjali knew the walls were closing in. Rajeev's suspicious glances and probing questions told her that the secret was slipping from their control. She felt trapped between the life of wealth and stability she had gained through her marriage and the consuming desire she had for Arjun. Fear began to overshadow passion, twisting what had once felt thrilling into something darker. Each day, she convinced herself that it was only a matter of time before Rajeev uncovered the truth. That fear slowly evolved into a chilling solution in her mind. If Rajeev were gone, everything would be easier. Arjun resisted at first, unsettled by the thought of harming his father. Yet Anjali knew exactly how to manipulate him. She painted their affair as something fragile that would be destroyed if Rajeev learned the truth. She spoke of freedom, of a future where they could be together without secrecy or fear. The pressure she applied was relentless, mixing affection with guilt until Arjun began to waver. He loved his father, but his devotion to Anjali was overpowering. Under her influence, he convinced himself that they had no choice. The plan they devised was deceptively simple. They would stage a robbery gone wrong, a story that would deflect suspicion and give the appearance of tragedy rather than betrayal. Anjali insisted that it had to look chaotic but not too obvious. Jewelry would be scattered, drawers left open, and cash pulled from the safe. Arjun's role was to carry out the act, while Anjali ensured the timing was right. They chose a humid summer night when Rajeev would be working late in his study, the room where he often lost track of time, surrounded by files and ledgers. When the moment came, the house was shrouded in silence except for the soft hum of a ceiling fan. Arjun entered his father's study with shaking hands, carrying the weapon that would end everything. The attack was swift, brutal, and irreversible. Rajeev never had a chance to defend himself. His body collapsed against the desk, papers scattered in the struggle. Anjali rushed in afterward, her face pale but her resolve unbroken. Together, they hurried to stage the scene, scattering valuables and pulling open cupboards to create the illusion of a violent break-in. On the surface, it looked convincing. To anyone glancing quickly, the room bore all the marks of intrusion. But in their panic, they overlooked small details that would later unravel the lie. Doors with no signs of forced entry, valuables left untouched, and fingerprints smudged across surfaces where none should have been. The crime was complete, but the seeds of exposure were already planted. The morning after Rajeev's death, the Mehra household was thrown into chaos. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering in disbelief that a respected businessman could be killed in his own home. The police arrived quickly, combing through the study and photographing every detail. At first glance, the scene seemed to suggest a robbery that had spiraled into violence, but the detectives were not convinced. Something about the arrangement of objects felt too deliberate, too staged. The supposed ransacking appeared clumsy, as though someone unfamiliar with real theft had tried to mimic it. Investigators began by questioning those inside the house. Anjali presented herself as a grieving wife, her voice trembling as she described hearing noises in the night. Arjun stood by her side, visibly shaken, though his nervousness caught the attention of officers. He avoided eye contact, his hands trembling, his words inconsistent. In contrast, Anjali spoke with a rehearsed calmness that struck some as unnatural. Detectives noted both their behaviors, planting seeds of doubt about the story they told. As forensic teams analyzed the crime scene, inconsistencies multiplied. No signs of forced entry were found on any door or window, suggesting the killer had been someone already inside. Valuables that should have been the first target for thieves, expensive electronics, and untouched jewelry, remained in plain sight. More damning was the discovery of fingerprints belonging to both Anjali and Arjun on objects disturbed in the supposed robbery. Their explanations for these prints were weak, and suspicions grew stronger. The investigation widened, and phone records were examined. What they revealed shattered the illusion of innocence. Late night calls and cryptic messages between Anjali and Arjun told the story of a relationship far beyond what was appropriate. The affair, once hidden behind locked doors and stolen moments, was now exposed in black and white. Detectives confronted them separately, and under mounting pressure, their carefully constructed facade began to collapse. Anjali tried to shift blame onto Arjun, portraying herself as a victim of manipulation. Arjun, torn between guilt and anger, admitted to the affair but claimed Anjali had masterminded the murder. Their bond, once built on passion and secrecy, disintegrated into betrayal and self-preservation. Eventually, the court heard the full tale of obsession, manipulation, and murder. Both were convicted, their names forever tied to one of the most shocking scandals their community had ever seen. The tragedy of the Mehra family became a chilling reminder of how easily desire can turn into destruction. What appeared to be a perfect home had hidden a secret so twisted it ended in blood, leaving behind only loss, shame, and the haunting memory of a family destroyed from within.